All right, looks like it's 8 a.m. So we're going to go ahead and get started with the May 14th, 2025 General Government Committee meeting. As always, our first order of business is call to order and followed by roll call. I am joined by Councilmember Leatta Dalhoff. I believe we are expecting Councilmember Kathy to join us shortly. But we have quorum, so we'll go ahead and get started. The third item on our agenda is approval of the minutes from our April 15th meeting. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
And I will second. It's a motion by Councilmember Dalhoff, seconded by myself. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the motion passes unanimously. So moving into the substantive portion of our agenda, item number 4 is the 2025 comp plan periodic update. We're going to be discussing today the lands for public purposes and utilities section. Brad, I think you and Erica might be helping us work on this one.
Yep, we'll help you work through it. Just have a quick announcement that I just want to let you know about. In responding to the council members' questions about the development permit review process, we have scheduled a presentation at your July 8 work session with Jeff Myers to address any questions the council may have about the process. One thing that we are asking you and the other council members is if you have any specific questions you would like to have addressed at that time, share those ahead of time with me, so I can in turn have Jeff get those prepped and all that stuff. So anything, email, phone call, grab me in the office, that kind of thing. So
Sounds good.
Let me switch to the regularly scheduled part of the program as soon as I figure out the right screen. Can you see my screen? Okay.
No, not yet.
Not yet. That's not good because that is what I'm sharing. Okay, how about now?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. This is quite exciting actually because we are presenting the first 2 complete drafts of the elements that our staff has prepared. The lands for public purposes and the utilities element. What we will be discussing today, the format and everything for the elements will be carried forth throughout the rest of the elements that you'll see. So as we're going through in terms of both the content and the format, any questions or concerns you have, please share them. Pardon me. Our intent is to review the format for both parts 1 and 2. Again, part 1 is dealing with goals, policies, and implementation actions. It's intended to be the easier part to pull off the shelf and use as part of the council and your advisory committee's discussions, and as well as staff's. Part 2 is the technical side. Our intent really is also to take some feedback on any of the goals, policy, and draft implementation actions that you have part of your packet. I'll explain the timeline as we go forward. There will be plenty of time, I think, to address concerns and comments, but I just want to make sure that you have the opportunity to do that. Also lay out the next steps in this particular process. So wanted to just sort of start with talking through what the format of part 1 of the goals, policies, and actions looks like. This is a similar format that we'll follow for all of the elements going forward. The introduction section provides the general basis for why we're doing this element, also provides a how to use this element. So there's a guide to what each of the parts of the document contain and their purpose. Chapter 2 will contain how this particular element addresses GMA, and part 3 will address how we address the countywide planning policies. You will note in both of these elements that those 2 sections are relatively short, 1 or 2 pages. And then chapter 4 will be the heart of the document. This is where the elements, goals, and policies are. The intent of splitting out the goals and policies from the draft implementation actions was twofold. One, in some cases, the section was becoming a little bit too unwieldy in terms of being a quickly usable document. The other part is that we realized that the goals and policies are really going to be intended to be active for the next 20 years, and meaning that The draft implementations actions are truly that. They're draft. They're things that will form the basis for our initial work programs, but we'll be adding and subtracting and modifying those implementation actions over the course of the 20 years. And then to do that, we'll be using the goals and policies as the means to lay that out and provide the framework for that. So we wanted to make it a clearer distinction between those two and call that out. So the Appendix A draft implementation action contains all of the implementation actions we've been discussing to this point. It identifies both the goals and policies, and the implementation actions identifies the responsible departments and gives a general timeline for all that. For a format for part 2, this will differ between the elements. So this first one is dealing with the lands for public purposes. There's an introductory section, again, about what the document's intent is, how to use it, and so forth. And then it gets into some very specific things that deal with lands for public purposes. So Chapter 2 deals with capital facilities review analysis. This really is the basis for doing the capital facilities plans that are done for every 6 years. This is the sort of the structure that gives the sort of the financial background in terms of where revenue can come from, where we have currently been doing those kinds of things, and an analysis of some of the larger projects and so forth that are going forward in this area. Chapter 3 deals with those things that the city manages in terms of capital facilities and services, and it's pretty broad. So it covers everything from police and fire in terms of their facility needs, parks and rec, transportation, water, sewer, etc., as well as, say, City Hall and other city facilities like the library building or the senior center. Chapter 4 deals with other publicly owned facilities that are part of the what we need to address as part of any development in the city. That meaning the whole purpose of this element, again, is to make sure that we have sufficient capital facilities to support the development that's coming forward. In this case, this would cover things like intercity transit or the school district facilities and so forth. Appendix A is basically the list of all the documents we use to develop the element, and then also Appendix B, I'd like to call your attention to, is a new capital facilities equity checklist. This comes out of the work that we've been doing with Linda, our consultant on the equity side. And really, this is a checklist that would be used to evaluate individual items that are coming onto a capital facilities plan. I really ask that you take a close look at that. There's a lot of notes in there from the staff, but I think this is something that is, out of all the things that are in this document, that's probably the likely to have a lot of discussion.
Brad, for chapter 4, is that the chapter that would then also contain things like mental health treatment service centers, like evaluation and treatment facilities, juvenile detention, jails, stuff like that?
That was the same question that the Planning Commission answered, so I'm a little concerned you're channeling their discussion from last night. Essential public facilities like airports and jails and other land uses like that. In the original 2016 element, lands for public purposes, there was a section that dealt with those things. Those really don't come into the category of we need to provide these because development is occurring. It is a requirement that we provide those under state law, as more specifically as a land use type. And that's why we moved that whole section over to the land use element to deal with. So it's not like we need to have a certain capacity for airports or a certain capacity for jails or that kind of thing. And that's the reason for us moving it over to the other element.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
The part 2 for utilities, again, follows its own format. Again, introduction. Chapter 2 deals with utility regulations in a general sense. Utilities, again, are the privately provided services that, for say, PSE or the pipeline services and so forth. So PSE handles natural gas and electricity. Natural gas and fuel pipelines. We have some pipelines that cross the city that we have to address. Telecommunications, and again, the foundational documents and the private utility contact information. A lot of this information was dependent upon us receiving information from the private utilities. There are state requirements, so things they should be providing. We weren't able to get the level of information that we thought we should. So it's not as complete as we would like, but it's basically what we're going to have to go forward with. So I wanted to dive into the lands for public purposes very quickly. So again, as I mentioned, it covers a whole range of things, and I've left out.
Brad, we're kind of getting a little bit of feedback on your microphone. It sort of sounds staticky. I don't know if that's just me.
Okay.
I can hear it as well. It's not your voice, but it's piercing.
Oh, okay. I apologize. I noticed my video has been shuttering, but I'm not hearing the feedback. I'll keep everything very quickly. If it becomes too much, I'll turn it over to Dana, and hopefully her system's better than mine.
Okay.
By the way, if it becomes too much, just start screaming, and then I'll turn off my everything. We've talked a little bit about the various things that are other public managed. Each of the chapters has its own inventory, level of service, and planned project sections. So all of those things are broken down in individual chapters. So say fire would have its own chapter dealing with all these things and so forth. One, again, stress the relationship between the lands for public purposes element and the other things that the council deals with. Again, lands for public purposes is our 20-year plan for dealing with growth in the city and lays out the larger foundations for how capital facilities are addressed. Capital facilities plans are a 6-year plan similar to your budget. Your budget really every 2 years is how we're actually going to pay for everything we list out in the capital facilities plan. And then the functional plans are updated as needed, but are really sort of even more the foundational documents. So when I'm talking about the countywide sewer plan or the water plan or other things, that's what we're referring to when we talk about that. Again, connections to the other elements, it pretty much covers everything else. We'll just move into the goals. First goal, providing necessary and efficient services to Tumwater and urban growth area. Just as a quick reminder, all of the elements in the comprehensive plan deal with not only the city itself, but its urban growth area. The intent is that these individual elements would be adopted as part of the joint plan with the county. So we're planning for growth for this whole area, not just our city. So this goal is intended to provide, obviously providing adequate public facilities is concurrent with growth, accounting for the growth in population and other distressing disparities, including equity in public services. So that goes back to that checklist. That's part of Appendix B. Goal 2 deals with supporting improvements to provision of public services. Again, just making sure that we incorporate environmental quality into our capital improvement programs and so forth. That takes care of the goals for the lands for public purposes. That is probably the shortest of all the goal sections. So utilities, again, we deal with the 4 different types. Purpose, again, is to talk about general inventory, location, capacity, demand, and also deal with issues that are for climate change and resiliency. Now, those climate change and resiliency things also play a part in the lands for public purposes element. So it's just an underlying thing that we have. The goals for the utilities element include increasing efficiency when planning for and siting utilities. Now, because we're not providing particular service, we do, however, provide the permitting for that. So communication with utility providers, clear permit timelines, things like our underground management plan and further, doing those kinds of things are things that are under our control. We'll also have a goal for increasing energy generation for renewable resources, for reducing our carbon footprint. And that becomes, again, to things that the city can do in terms of incentives for installing solar panels, working on larger scale interjurisdictional energy projects, and what we can do in terms of adopting uniform building codes and permitting practices to help those things. Goal 3 deals with enhancing our electricity distribution, monitoring and storage systems. And this really comes into play with the new state push for allowing for energy storage facilities. Now, these can be a wide range of things. It could be actually all the way down to something small in someone's garage, all the way up to a huge facility like the one they're building in Makota right now. And it's something really sort of take advantage of the fact that we can generate electricity at particular times of the year through solar, but we might need to use it at other times of the year. 4 deals with increasing energy efficiency. And I apologize, I'm actually going to switch headphones to see if that helps. Is that any better?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm
that's
feeling a
much
lot
better.
like the NASCAR driver here now. We just need to get the wheels off and we'll go forward. Goal 4, increasing energy efficiency and conservation. Again, these are things the city can do in terms of green buildings, doing energy audits, and any kind of incentive related programs that support that. Goal 5, ensuring vital utilities are created, operated, and operated in a safe manner. This really focuses on pipeline safety and what we can do to manage those particular things within the city and consider that. Our next steps in the process for the update is to complete our final round of stakeholder input engagement. We are anticipating that we will have these going, an email going out to all of our stakeholders for both these elements later this week, as well as a notice going out to all of the people on our comprehensive plan mailing list, letting them know that we're releasing these elements in review. And we're going to be sort of staggering them out at about a 2-week, 3-week interval. So this will be the first batch that will be going out. Councilmember Dahlhoff.
Yeah, Brad, have we figured out how council, like, if you're gonna do, I know I talked to Lance about Teams, like a Teams folder or access that way, or like a way where we can each go in and you have collectively all of our comments. Have we figured that out yet?
That's something, yeah, and Planning Commission raised that issue also. And one of the concerns that when we tried to do a Teams or other thing, we ran into some issues with public meetings and conversations that way. So we will have some level of structure where the council can pull the documents, send them back to us in any form that they wish, or, you know, we can do verbal comments, written comments in terms of, and so forth, and deal with it that way. But yes, we will have that.
Okay. Thanks, Brad.
So the intent is to start the adoption process in October and wrap that up in the winter. So the first ordinance briefing before the Planning Commission will be in October. Any comments and so forth, you can send them to our periodic email update and goes from there. Any questions on what I rapidly went through?
Councilmember Dahlhoff, any additional questions or anything?
No, that one's pretty straightforward, and I'll just wait till I get access to circle back again,
Okay.
but everything it's pretty straightforward with this element.
So what we might do in the interim is we can send the Word versions of all the documents to the individual council members and then have them provide comments through that. I think that's probably the most efficient way at the moment.
Okay, that'd be great.
Yeah, that works. Thank you.
Excellent. I don't think we have any other questions, so I think that concludes that item for us. Going back to the top of our agenda here. Our next item is the 5901 Black Lake Belmore Southwest 10% annexation petition. Brad, I think you're going to help us with this one too.
Yeah. Sure. Can you see that presentation?
Yes.
Okay. And I'm not getting feedback this time?
No.
Hopefully it wasn't.
I mean, we'll have feedback for you, but
yeah, I'm asking
fine.
no, feedback from me to you, not the other way. So this is a annexation petition similar to the one that the council heard on 93rd. This is a completely separate petition that has come in. It is located on Black Lake Belmore Road. We'll go into the detail.
You'll notice that the process again will be very similar because this again is the 60% annexation petition method. They have a couple parcels. So they've submitted all the necessary paperwork for both the 10% and the 60%. So the presentation will go over again what the annexation petition contains. It will explain again the process for the 60% annexation. We'll talk about next steps. Similarly, ask will be for that this be scheduled for your June 3rd council meeting for a discussion with the applicant, with the petitioners about whether the council wants to go forward with this particular annexation petition or not. Background is the owner of a property on Black Lake Belmore is requesting to be annexed. They filed complete 10% annexation petitions on April 29th. Again, because the owner owns all the property, including annexation, they've included both of the necessary paperwork for both the 60 and the 10% annexations. They have indicated their willingness to assume their fair share of indebtedness and have no proposed changes to the current land use and designation for the property. We're not aware of any pending development applications on the property that are with Thurston County at the moment. So it's strictly a annexation based on the property as it is now. The annexation area itself is just northwest of the intersection of Black Lake Belmore and 60th. It's about 9.72 acres in size. It is single family low density residential and is currently undeveloped. Here's a picture of it. So to the south, this is 60th. And then we're sort of midway. We're north of the school, but before we get to the intersection to the north. It's owned by Terrence Hess. So he and his representative are invited to attend both the council meeting and this particular meeting to provide comment. Our initial request again for the council is because within 60 days of receiving a complete petition, we need to find out whether the council is willing to accept, reject, or geographically modify the proposed annexation area. Or whether or not the council will require adoption of a new land use designation. Now, in this particular case, because we're under the joint plan and the land uses have already been established by the council and the commission, there's no change here. And also the final thing is whether the councils will require assumption of existing city indebtedness by the area to be annexed. So the staff report includes a discussion of the change of taxation for the parcel. It's a draft format, but it's in appendix of the staff report. Again, very quickly, the process, we started the process with the initiation. If the GGC wants to recommend that this go to the council, there'll be a meeting on the annexation proposal. We have completed they have completed the 60% petition. So we would, the next step, if council accepts this, is to send this to the county assessor to basically confirm the property ownership signatures. Once they have done that, then the council will have a hearing on the petition. And at that time, they'll be considering a resolution. And the resolution will be to accept the annexation if that's the council's wish. That will in turn go to the Boundary Review Board for their review. They have a whole process. Once the Boundary Review Board finishes their review, it will come back to the council for adoption of an ordinance, basically establishing the effective date of the annexation, and then all the noticing of annexation will go out. Now, one of the parts of the process that is included in this before we do the Boundary Review Board is we'll be reaching out, if the council decides to move forward, to the Black Lake McLean Fire District, because that is the one agency that will have some, transfer if they, we go through with this process. Our staff recommendation is to accept the proposal to annex with no modifications. We're not proposing any changes to the existing land use, and we are supporting the annexation area, assuming the city of Dennis. Again, your request is to place this petition on the June third council consideration and have a discussion with the applicants. If you decide to move it, we'll move through the process as we outlined already. Councilmember Doloff.
Thanks, Brad. When we have, like, this is a second example, quite quickly, of requests for annexing into Tumwater. Is it part of like your checklist or your process with the city to ask them, why do you want to be a part of Tumwater? So why does this person, Terrence Hess, want to be a part of Tumwater?
I think it's similar to the 93rd that they have indicated that they would like to develop the property and they would prefer to develop the property within the city rather than within the county.
That's correct, Brad. Sorry, I am Terrence's consultant.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or anything? I don't have any for my part.
No, I'm in support of it moving forward.
Yeah. Okay. Well, with that, I would entertain a motion that we place the 10% annexation petition on the June 3rd, 2025 City Council consideration calendar for the council to decide whether we accept the proposed annexation and whether we will require the assumption of existing city indebtedness for the area to be annexed.
So moved.
There's a motion by Councilmember Dohoff and seconded by myself, Councilmember Althauser. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes unanimously. Great. So moving right along, that brings us to our food system plan. And I think, let's pull up this item. For this one, Dana, are you gonna sort of do like a brief intro for this?
I sure can.
Great, that would be awesome. And I think if we could wrap this one up with a goal of wrapping this by like 8:45, that would be great. So we have time to get to our other items that should be pretty quick.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. For the record, I'm Dana Bowers, Associate Planner at City of Tumwater. And today we're bringing to you an item regarding the food system plan and happy to present the community food assessment for you. It's part of the packet. And today, because we are a little short on time, we're going to really focus on the next steps. So the food assessment really dove into where our gaps are in food. And so looking at those gaps, we really want to, bring to you some questions about how we best address those. And we have our consultant, Rebecca Potasnik here, who is going to give you more of the details. Thank you so much for coming, Rebecca. Go ahead and take it away.
Great. I'm keeping a careful eye on the time. And I'll just start to say, if you did have a chance to read it, but before we dive into talking about goals and objectives, if there's any questions that you had or anything that you wanted to comment on just in general about that community food assessment, which was striving to give you sort of a baseline snapshot of the environment currently, so we can use that in thinking about where you want to go in the future.
One thing that sort of came to mind for me as I was reading through it was just sort of the unknowns that we need to try to account for with like federal government changes in terms of eligibility for food benefits and things like that. I'm not sure that that's something that we really have a role or an ability to control, but it sort of seems like this overarching kind of shadow that could cast itself over whatever we try to do here. So I think trying to be cognizant of like, are work requirements going to be enhanced for food benefits? Are they going to get rid of like food benefits for able-bodied adults, period? There's like a lot of really scary stuff being discussed at the federal level. So I think trying to be cognizant of that in terms of not just access, not just in terms of how much supply exists, but also how much demand there is by way of resources and constraining those resources through other methods.
Absolutely. I think it's also shows that you all moving at this, thinking about a food system plan at this time and being proactive about what can happen at the more local level in addressing food security is super important.
Yeah. Leetta, did you have any other thoughts or comments to start to kick us off?
I guess just the main thing is regarding like in the sections of current collaborations and resources. I just see a lot of them going, wow, I have zero clue. Like there's an opportunity to strengthen those relationships, but also looking at the Fresh program that the school district cut. So like we're moving forward in this direction, and then we have other entities going in different directions. So like just something to keep that in mind as we move forward. How do we bring along everyone with us? So it's a great report, Rebecca. I really appreciate it.
And to speak to what you just brought up, Councilwoman, the part about that I included the regional collaboration, I thought it was important to take a look at what's happened historically in terms of working together in these partnerships, even though it wasn't a direct part of, say, the goals. It just seems like a really important consideration about how to move forward and what kinds of strategies to take on. Yeah. So basically, I guess my first maybe prompting question for you all, besides the two things that you brought up, did you notice any other key challenges or have heard from your constituents that I did not capture in that assessment?
Leah, did you want to start?
I'm just trying to think. I think it's all covered. I mean, I get more specific, but I think in general, yes, it's all captured.
Okay.
I agree.
And then, so, you all already established the main three goals of the food system plan, which was providing healthy food for all members of the community, reducing food waste, and supporting local food processing and production. So I'm using those as the three main goals, and then having sort of objectives or sub goals under that, unless you all have been thinking through and have other larger goals that you think should be teased out or that presented themselves to you from reading this. So then I would ask that we kind of dive in and start thinking about what are the smaller goals, because those three goals are very large, and to start thinking through what are the more granular goals. And I've been working on basically, when I interviewed and talked to the subject matter experts, they also provided information to help direct that. So when I draft up the goals and objectives for you, I will include what I heard from them. And I feel like that's also going to be a place for you all to decide what are the city's priorities, because certainly everything can't be done or might not be strategies that you want to pursue. But I would also ask you, if you already know of things that you're hoping show up in this food system plan, to please let me know that.
I guess my big thing now currently is saving the Fresh program because the school district cut it, but I don't want to lose that land. I don't want to lose that use. And I know that there's a handful of Thurston County commissioners that want to talk about that idea, right? And maybe open it up to other school districts. Like, so there's a larger opportunity to collaborate in that urban rural lifestyle and agriculture and credits for youth. So I don't want to lose the Fresh program. I want to expand the Fresh program, but now we got to save it. So I would love that to be prioritized in some capacity.
Great. And hopefully you did notice that the Fresh program was brought forward in the plan. Great.
Yeah.
I guess one question I sort of have is just like, as someone who's not as familiar with these programs or really sort of what a strategic plan for this sort of looks like this is sort of my first interaction with something of this nature. I guess I'm just sort of curious about your subject matter expertise, and when you were speaking with folks and doing interviews, was there anything particularly about our city that sort of surprised you or struck you as unique or interesting that might be particularly noteworthy?
I don't think there was anything that struck me that really stood out as a challenge that's happening in Tumwater that isn't happening elsewhere. No, I mean, I think there's some
Yeah.
things that sometimes folks would point to other municipalities, like saying like, oh, if we could do something like that the city of Olympia is doing. The city of Olympia, I think, is, and and when I spoke with the planning commission, they also brought forward some things that the city's doing that they wanted to make sure the city of Olympia is doing that I should look at more closely. But I don't think there's anything that struck me as like very unique happening here that's different
Yeah.
from our neighbors. Yeah.
One of the things that I'm sort of curious about is if, we don't really have a centralized, like Olympia has downtown, right? Like they have sort of a centralized place that is a service center in a lot of ways. There's all sorts of different services someone could receive if they go downtown. The senior center is downtown. The community kitchen is downtown. There's homelessness services downtown. DSHS has a CSO downtown. Like there's all sorts of different resources and services that are centrally located. And it seems like one of the challenges that I would assume would exist for a municipality that doesn't have sort of a centralized district like that would simply be the lack of knowledge for where to go when you do need help and assistance. Maybe that's more of like a communications challenge to be met than it is sort of a physical establishment of something. But that sort of always struck me as like probably a pretty big challenge. When I have done point in time counts, that's something that people do bring up when we talk to people who are experiencing homelessness who are outside in Tumwater is people go to Olympia for services because that's where that's where they know that they'll be able to find things comparatively.
And I will say that in my drafts of objectives under each of those goals, because of what I heard from people, there is an objective under each one of those goals that really does have to do with community education and engagement, about making sure folks know about what's out there and being able to leverage the city's resources in doing that through websites and social media and just the multitude of ways that information could get out to the community. So absolutely what you're saying can be echoed in what the plan is.
Great.
Yeah.
Adding to Michael's, my things as I'm thinking about council and our role, like I don't want to reinvent the wheel. I don't want us to like technically start new programs which will have impact to staff, right? And upset my mayor. So I'm thinking like, what are ways to support, right, in our community? So I'm thinking, how do we check in with senior services on Meals on Wheels and the clients that they have in Tumwater? Are they losing funding for that? So does Tumwater need to have a new line item in our budget for food safety, food security, food access, right? Like we now have a line item for senior protections where we partner with Rebuilding Together Thurston County to do home repairs, right? So is that something Tumwater can do to support those providing those services? In addition to saving fresh and having land for growing food, what does it look like for that distribution and the infrastructure in Tumwater? Separate from our human resources budget, which is like $15,000 that we do. So does council need to create a new line item in our budget to do a safety net? The other thing I would really love is we have a lending library system in Tumwater and you can see the locations on a map, right? I would love free pantries, which for me, the ultimate goal of all this is building community. Because when you have community, you have resilience, right? And so it goes back to when I grew up and we didn't have something in the house, I had to go to the neighbor. And if the neighbor didn't have it, my parents made me walk down 70th to Frontier Foods to get it. I want to bring our neighbors together. And so the whole concept of the little free pantry, give one, take one, that's what I would also love to see, and that to be adopted by the city and have those locations. We have 2 right now from the nonprofit Little Free Pantry, right? And then we have also one in a manufactured home park in their mail center. So something like that, tailoring, and instead of having people go somewhere, right? Like going to Mountain View Church for when the food bank does their distribution, what does it look like of meeting people where they're at and not expecting them to go and travel limited times, need a vehicle? That's the larger issue as well that I like to cover in our strategic goals and priorities is how do we meet people where they're at, knowing it's going to be different?
Absolutely. People also mentioned mobile pantries. I did hear it was raised to bring up some mapping. And back to the past regional collaboration, I feel like some of those, you were bringing up the question about, knowing about different supportive services and how they're doing financially and the impacts locally. And I think in the past, there were opportunities where people were getting together on a very regular basis around the table where you had all those players so that there was that free exchange of information. So again, I think that there's some need for, and it's going to be something that I'm going to recommend that's infused in this plan, is figuring out how the best ways to reinvigorate those regional efforts to be talking about these things. Because again, as we're all knowing, the food system, it's big, it's interjurisdictional. And so obviously, noting those things and noting about mapping the free pantries.
Rebecca, I love that idea. I mean, Michael and I and Joan, we serve on a lot of council assignments. Maybe that is an idea, like that it's a regional, like food access, food safety, health and nutrition, or something like that, where the jurisdictions assign someone. I love that idea.
And like I said in that, I put just a little summary in the document about the regional collaboration. I have more information there, and there have been times when the different jurisdictions were coming together and having seats at tables. So I think it's a bit of like looking at what's the model to pursue this time around. And it could be an interesting thing if the city of Tumwater was the one to kind of lead that effort of getting this reinvigorated.
I think a lot of people don't realize that council members, we love meetings. Like, so if we could add more meetings to our day.
or have a representative, right? Like have somebody that's not a council member, a staff
Right.
person that's attending and feeding it back and
If we're
figuring
going
out.
to talk about like collaborating and connecting, that's another idea of let's model the way. So I
Yeah.
love that, Rebecca.
And also the number of people that the subject matter experts that I was speaking to that were so pleased that the city of Tumwater was looking at creating a food system plan and taking leadership in that way. And so I feel like, again, if this is this place that you all can kind of go back to the region saying, we did this and it's time for us all to convene again and look at a different model that will have more lasting impact. The other thing is, some of the food system plans that you all looked at before I was brought onto the project, but that Brad had showed me the meeting packets that you had leading up to deciding to do this work. Those communities that created those food system plans, they have established like the equivalent of something like a food system council, where there was a regular convening body of people wrestling with these topics on a regular basis. And so that's another thing to think about, whether if it isn't happening regionally, even if there was something to happen at the Tumwater level with a body of citizens and subject matter experts that are tracking on this in a close way. I'll also ask you if there's things that you want me to look at in the interim between now and when I see you again, in terms of models that you've seen in other places that you want me to explore to see if it could be a relevant fit to address some of the challenges you're facing here. I mean, I have ones already on my list and I have things that subject matter experts gave me, but I just don't want, if there's things that you all have on your radar that have been brought to your attention, I'm happy to look into them.
Sure, I'm really aware or knowledgeable enough to cite case examples. Leah, does anything come to mind for you?
No, like I'm looking to Rebecca. The only thing, the concept is life cycle, like the circular economy, right? From beginning to end, to growing, to distribution, to use, but also that end piece. So the diversion from a landfill, right? So composting. So whatever is left that doesn't distribute it, what would that look like to support our farmers in our community? So whatever the model is, I trust your judgment, Rebecca. And also
Great.
having from beginning to end that there's outputs and inputs and everything is utilized as best as it can be.
Great. I'm noting our time. We're at 1:15. I feel unless you have some outstanding questions or comments, let you move on with your agenda.
That was great, Rebecca. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's great. Thank you so much for the briefing. We
Mhm.
appreciate it.
Yep.
So that will move us then to item number 7 on the agenda, which is the 2025 Comp Plan Middle Housing Grant with the Department of Commerce. We need to make an amendment to that approved grant. And Brad, are you gonna help us with this one again?
Yeah, so this is very similar to the amendments that you heard already for the other 2 grants that we have for the climate and for the periodic update. We are just changing the deliverables for this grant and to make sure that we don't need to deliver finals, but actual drafts at the end of June of this year.
Pretty simple. Any questions, Leah?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Well, I don't have any questions either. It's a pretty simple one. Another good
Mhm.
example of how it will make sense when we make some changes to how our permissive structure exists for things that we have to approve. But with that, I would entertain a motion to put the 2025 Comp Plan Middle Housing Grant with the Department of Commerce Amendment number 1 on the May 20, 2025 Council consent calendar with a recommendation to approve and authorize the mayor to sign.
So moved.
The motion by Councilmember Dalhoff and seconded by myself, Councilmember Althauser. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes unanimously. Great. And that brings us to the last item on our agenda, item number 8, which is our integrated planning grant with the Department of Ecology. We're making another amendment to this one too. Kelly, I think you might walk us through this
Yes.
one. Excellent.
Wonderful. I am going to share my screen. Can you see my screen?
We can.
Yes.
Wonderful. So this is my first presentation to any council committee here, so I am very excited. I'm going to speed run through this so that I can keep you on time. So I'm here as your assistant city administrator and as your lead staffer for economic development efforts. And as you know, brownfield redevelopment is a really important economic program here at the city. And so just for context, this agreement, the monies used are for our due diligence environmental assessment work at the former WashDOT Olympic Region headquarters on Capitol Boulevard. So due to its historical uses, there is perceived or real contamination here, so that qualifies it as a brownfield. In 2021, as you know, WashDOT vacated the site, and we are currently working with them to assess these grounds for contamination and to help them along the demolition and due diligence process to see if this is something that would be interesting to the city if council so decides. And so just a few details about the grant. It's from the Department of Ecology. It's $200,000. So far, we've drawn down $83,000 of this money, and you're well aware of the purpose. And the term of this grant ends in June. And so because we are working with WashDOT, we're not just working on our timeline, we're working with our partners at WashDOT to ensure that they can fully complete their environmental assessments, and then also that we can work with them on any code enforcement issues, safety issues at the site, and basically walk with them. And as you know, the state budget challenges and some of the different narratives that have come out, we really want to be sensitive to our partners. And so the amendment is proposing a 2-year extension. And for the public's benefit, there was a really fantastic detailed update on this project by Administrator Parks on March 25th. The phase 1 assessment is complete, and in June, we expect to start the actual soil sampling, the phase 2 work. And I just want to report we've had a positive collaboration with WashDOT staff. I want to thank our partners at Ecology, Dan, Alia, and Tom, who provided us amazing technical assistance, especially for the new kid. And I appreciate the mentorship of Mike Matlock, especially in walking through the last 3 months of this learning. And so our recommendation is to place the Department of Ecology Integrated Planning Grant Amendment on the May 20th, 2025 City Council consent calendar with a recommendation to approve and authorize the mayor to sign. Thank you.
Great, excellent presentation, Kelly. Thank you so much. Leetta, do you have any questions? This one's pretty straightforward too.
I'm in support of this, but I will tell when I talk to my council mates, I'll say that Kelly presented to us first. I'm going to tell everyone that Kelly talked to us first. And I'm in complete support of this and placing it on the consent. You're just adjusting the date, and I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, with that, I would entertain a motion that we place the integrated planning grant with the Department of Ecology Amendment number 1 on the May 20, 2025 City Council consent calendar with a recommendation to approve and authorize the mayor to sign.
So moved.
It's a motion by Councilmember Dolph and seconded by myself, Councilmember Althauser. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Great.
Thank you.
That, I believe, takes us to the end of our agenda, unless there are any other updates or good of the order. I don't think there are. So with that, we are adjourned. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it. Have a great day.